This past week, we finally got some information regarding Dawn of DCU, and just judging by the reaction, not just from the viewers, but if you go onto social media and you see the way that people were responding to the information they gave, which is that Dawn of DCU will include 3 events within the first year. And they also let out about 7 of the 13 new creative teams that are going to be taking over these new titles. It feels like this might already be dead before it even gets started. And here to talk to me about that is Jim from Weird Science. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great, Wes. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's crazy that they could actually tank this so early. They haven't even given out all the information. The teaser that we did get that was Teenie Howard taking over Harley Quinn, that didn't go over well. And I think really the most damning information we got is Mariko Tamaki taking over the Green Lantern Hal Jordan series. People have been waiting for a Hal Jordan series for like 3 years now, and it feels like they're almost sticking it to fans with this.
Yeah, it does. And people have been waiting desperately for a Hal Jordan Green Lantern series, but Green Lanterns as a whole. And when you end up announcing Mariko Tamaki on that book, it just doesn't fit. It's not even shade thrown at just Mariko Tamaki. It's just the idea of that doesn't seem like a fit. And I saw people, and unfortunately, they are writing it off already before it even comes out.
You would think that DC Comics, their editorial staff, and the leadership that they do have would recognize the talents that they have, the perceived weaknesses and strengths of those talents, and would try to put them on the titles and kind of just have a feel for what their readers really want and the characters that they're looking for to come out of the gate, with the Mariko Tamaki on a Green Lantern book featuring Hal Jordan, where you put Philip Kennedy Johnson, a much more highly regarded writer at the time, coming off of Warworld Saga, and you put him on John Stewart. I understand John Stewart is probably going to be a bigger figure in the DCU. Sounds like they're going to do a streaming show about him and stuff like that. But Hal Jordan is the Green Lantern for most people. John Stewart just quite frankly isn't. Why would you put the stronger writer on the less popular character?
And I think that is kind of poking at the fans a bit. And the idea that they even have a John Stewart book, which I love John Stewart. And I think Philip Kennedy Johnson, being a military man, he's going to be able to go with that. But that shows, a fit that actually I commend a bit. But having just a Hal Jordan versus a John Stewart book, you're still not giving Hal Jordan fans what they deserve. They haven't had a book, pretty much in the main continuity because the Grant Morrison deal was a little wacky, but you really aren't giving them. It's almost like a side thing. Hey, by the way, I know you'd complain and here you go. And that's what a lot of these end up feeling like. They don't feel like DC is reading the room at all with what their fans haven't enjoyed or what they have enjoyed. And overall, it just seems like, they're just kind of tone deaf with all this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, obviously, you review a lot of comic books from Marvel, DC. You do independent comic books as well. I think you do some stuff with manga. Mm-hmm. But people do know you from DC Comics, and you get a lot of feedback. It's not that difficult to discern or understand what the audience is actually looking for. A real return to the roots of the characters, a nice shared, connected superhero universe with better creative talents involved, and just the first volley of information that we've got doesn't really spell that out. Yes, we are getting a Mark Waid and Dan Moore on a Shazam book, and that sounds absolutely dynamite. And the art on Doom Patrol does look very good, but there's these other things that are just pushed in there, and it seems to have taken the oxygen out of the room. What do you think people were expecting? What were DC Comics fans actually hopeful for with this Dawn of DCU? What did they think would actually change?
Well, here you're coming out of a crisis. Usually after a crisis, you will get a change. And I think people were looking for more of a definitive, solid change with a bunch of books with some new creative teams. And this is starting to be what a lot of people feared, a lot of shuffling around stuff that started, as you said, with Teenie Howard and the Harley Quinn thing. And it's not the idea that the characters are bad. It's these writers, and some of them just, you see their names and you start to cringe. But I think people wanted to see a new thing going forward, and that this Dawn of DC would have this overall feel, not a book a month, this coming out now, this in June. And I think that kind of let the sails out as well, or, the wind out of the sails of it with that play, that it doesn't feel like a real change. It feels, again, like putting a finger in the dike. It feels like you're just trying to stop leaks each month. And it just, maybe it was the way they presented it. Maybe it is more than that, but it just, the whole thing, people were excited. And then a day later now, I see people less excited as they start thinking about it. And that kills me, because I want people to be excited about DC Comics.
Well, it feels like, just looking at all the dates, they're all coming out in different months. They're rolling out these 20 titles apparently over like an 8-month period. It almost feels like the leadership and the editorial staff at DC Comics really didn't have a plan for this.
No.
We're like, well, what should we do? Well, let's hire this person. That'll be done in 3 months. Well, let's hire this person. That'll be done in 5 months' time. And it doesn't feel like anything was really planned out like as a concrete, this is what we're going to go forward with. It feels like they're maybe just throwing crap at the wall. And they are giving themselves a lot of opportunities if they don't come out of the gate strong with their first 2 or 3 titles for people to just give up on Dawn of DCU before it even begins, because some of the stronger titles aren't going to come out for another 3 or 4 months after that.
I was just going to say the stronger titles come out in the back half of what we were actually told. There's still a lot of books that will be announced, but when you start it out, you're going to already have that bad. Now, this is if the first few titles are bad, you'll get a bad taste in your mouth. That's your first impression. That's going to throw a lot of people off, but this ends up feeling like it could have been better served if you had more books, and even stuff like, where's Wonder Woman? Is that just going to go on like normal? People are asking me questions, as I'm sure they're asking you. I have no idea for some of these, because it is just this, let's throw it out there kind of feel to it. And I really wish that there was more of that boom where people would get into the comic shop, grab all the stuff, pick some titles, because when you get those, then they're going to get more. Oh, I like this, I'll get that. But with this, who's going to get that excited about this new thing where, oh, I want that book. Oh, that doesn't come out till August. You're going to forget about it. You're not going to be that excited about it. I don't know that if you're excited about something in August, that's going to necessarily make you think, well, I might as well buy this one in January. It's a weird rollout. It seems like it's based on the MCU movie type deal, but this is comics. It's not the same thing.
And that's weird is they're doing these 3 events, and there's kind of like the foundation of what they're doing with Dawn of DCU. You're coming out with Lazarus Planet. The next event you would think would be around June or July. It's going to be a Batman event. And we're going to end the year with a Superman Brainiac event. But if you look at the past few events that DC Comics have had, right now we're finishing up Dark Crisis. That hasn't been good. No. Trial of the Amazons was really, really bad.
That was a mess, yeah.
For that, we had when the Magistrate takes over Gotham for the 3rd time in like 2 years under James Tynion.
Yeah, Fear State. That was not good.
State,
yep.
That was a bad event. Dark Knight's Death Metal was an enormous letdown. Future State was pretty much atrocious and brought us down this path here. And they're relying on events again with creators who haven't pulled off events in the past. Joshua Williamson, I think he's a good writer. I personally like him on titles, but Dark Crisis on Infinite Earth has been a pretty huge letdown. I don't think it's delivered really at all, but it's clear that he's going to be writing the Superman event. Why are they trying to fit these people into positions that they really can't handle? And coming out of the gate with just event is not a way to get me excited about anything.
That's the big problem. And I agree with Joshua Williamson. He's a fine writer. I think that this is too big for him at this moment by himself. But as you said, you have people, and what is this whole thing going to be? The Dawn of DC, you're trying to get old readers back, because old readers have been sick of events. They have event fatigue before the last couple of years, and they jumped off because of it. You had too many events. You have new readers who, it's tough to get a new thing going, new readers, and then right away say, hey, there's 3 events. That's too much for a new reader, in my mind. And so why did they come out? And I'm looking forward to Lazarus Planet, Mark Waid doing that. But that's the thing you announced even before you had that. Like, you're starting out with this idea of, okay, we just had the big event. Oh, by the way, 3 more in this year. It's too much. It's not a good play. Again, that's being tone deaf, and that's not having a strong, creative, editorial, whatever it might be, to come up with something better than just, hey, let's sell because we say it's an event. Those days are over, and people are really fighting back against it.
Well, and I think people just don't have a lot of confidence in DC Comics and really their editorial staff. We know they're bringing in bad writers, but it feels like the people overseeing this aren't very good or familiar with the characters themselves. If you go out there and read Dark Crisis, Young Justice, I don't even know what Megan Fitzmartin is really talking about. The stuff that she's trying to comment on when she's actually talking about the characters and not putting down the fans, like those things have already been resolved, or they were never really issues within the comic books themselves. She's fixing problems that truly don't exist at this point. And I don't see any chance that we're actually going to change the editorial staff and the direction for the creative themselves. I know you've had a lot of examples when you've gone back to DC creators or even the editorial staff and been like, how did this happen? It doesn't feel like they know the characters, or Do they not know the history? We've recently had some mistakes as far as continuity, and it turns out they really don't know the history because maybe the editorial staff is overtaxed, but like they're going on to Wikipedia to learn about characters now.
Yeah, and I think they are overtaxed, but I also think that you're going to get a lot of editorial. If you notice, they have left. I mean, DC has had a lot of editorial leave, and I think who are left are not strong enough to guide new writers who need to be guided. That's what the editorial is supposed to do. Not everybody knows every character, but somebody needs to be there. And it's funny, the books that we actually are enjoying right now, either I've talked to people or we would know, like a Mark Waid, he knows the characters. He's going to write them. He doesn't need anybody to hold his hands. But other people, say a Jeremy Adams, we love the Flash. He has told me he has gone back and legitimately read just about everything that he could with Wally West and even the other Flashes. So he's done that work. Some people aren't willing to do that. Some people don't have the time, but that's where editorial has to jump in and guide these people, because they are hiring people who aren't necessarily comic book writers, and they have nobody to guide them. And it's a big mess. And it kind of goes through with this play, with this Dawn of DC, where you want to have this thing. I want to read this announcement and get confidence that now they got it right. Now it's going to be the thing, because if you've been reading DC every week, like me and you have, you know that they keep stopping, this event here, this event there, and nothing ever sticks. We need something to stick. And I'll wait to see what happens. I just don't get that confidence yet in that creative teams and the books they announce.
Yeah, if you go into a lot of those wiki pages and even like the fan wikis that they've created for DC and Marvel Comics, and yes, they do have a wiki entry for pretty much every single issue and stuff in there, but if you go read a comic book and then you look at the wiki entry, there's a lot of discrepancies. There's a lot of story. There's a lot of resolution to things that are happening within the story that are never covered in there. You could never actually get a good feel for what's happening with the characters, who the characters are, just by looking at that material. If you don't go in there, dig into the characters, actually go and read the comic books and get an understanding of them, you're going to have stuff like Dark Crisis, Young Justice, where nothing really makes sense. You're going to have 15 versions of Harley Quinn running around the DC Comics universe because everyone has a different voice for the character and they don't even know where that character begins or ends.
Yeah, and you don't get the context of how it's happening. You don't get the interactions, and you just don't get that connective tissue. And what ends up happening is you're reading a comic by a writer that you don't have the faith that they are giving their all like you would want. It's a weird play, almost like I'm reading something that I know more about. It's so odd the way that they play it out. And yeah, there's nerd nitpicks. Oh, well, that happened. And that this is more broad, and it's becoming a really big problem. Now, you had a video way back where DC was putting together a Bible. They were putting together a deal. Hopefully, they got somebody who knows what they're doing, or I'm crossing my fingers. It's one of those things. Hopefully they have it. And in a time right now where the continuity really is all over the place, in the thing, you just came out of an event going into something that was supposed to be this new, they don't really give me that, again, confidence that they are pushing forward with something that's a cohesive whole. I just hope that this is it. I really do. I hope that this can come together, but first bunch of announcements kind of got me like, just we'll see. But some people, it's a jumping off point, like every other thing like this is. If you have events that you're going to lose some people now, people don't need that, and they have 3 coming up. It's a little depressing. It is.
Well, you mentioned a key word there, and we'll start wrapping this up. I think it's confidence. I think the readers, the customers of DC Comics have little to no confidence right now. And the information that they provided outside of Mark Waid and Dan Moore on Shazam and a couple of pieces of art did look good, but do we really know who Dennis Culver is and if he's a good writer yet? I don't really think so, but there are definitely some negative things in there that really back up the lack of confidence that readers have in DC Comics. It doesn't feel like this is a big dawning of a new age. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a new DCU. It feels like they're shuffling the chairs on the Titanic. It's still a sinking ship. It's going to be the same creators, and it's going to be an over-reliance on events. And it does feel, just from the early stages, perhaps there will be some big announcements that will change my mind, but it feels like it's almost DOA, and we haven't even got all the information yet.
I agree. And I wish that there was more of a wow moment in these announcements, or this first announcement. We still have time, and there's going to be that hidden gem though. Oh my God, this book I didn't think would be that great, whatever. But it's just, as of now, looking at it, I just am not that excited. And I want to be, and I see people even reacting worse, that they're just done. But, you know, we'll see. We have to wait and see. We'll be reading them, obviously, reviewing them. It didn't get me that excited. I really wanted something that would get people really fired up, and I don't think this was it.
As Jim just mentioned, we have heard behind-the-scenes sources talk about they are working on character Bibles. A lot of people think that perhaps they're going to start licensing the characters out and have other companies do the comic book publishing with Batman and Superman and other characters. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes turmoil and anxiety about the future of DC Comics and their publishing efforts. This might be the last straw. This might be their final chance to get things right before David Zaslav takes the axe to DC Comics. Definitely check this one out where I talk about the behind-the-scenes turmoil, anxiety at DC Comics at this moment. If you don't see it here, there's also a link in the video description.